Heavenly Father, we invite you to be present in this hour. Help us that we can take advantage of this beautiful possibility that we have here gathered this place. Please guide our thoughts and words and direct this class. In Christ's name, amen. So, we just started our School of the Prophets in Bolivia, 1st of May, and this was before I agreed with Tabo that I would come here to this place, to be at this school, Canada. And it has been some busy weeks, but with the Lord's help, I can share with you that now we have also a school in Bolivia, and this is intended to be a full year, or a school that runs the whole year. It's not just for a couple of months or so. It's a proper school, all right. The Lord opened some doors, and we got a beautiful property where we can have the school at the moment. It's a lot of it's country living. We have lots of fruit trees, lots of gardening to do there. It's beautiful. We've been challenged by the weather because we have a river that has to be crossed, and the river is not crossable always. Sometimes we needed to cross it walking, which was a little bit it goes like this high, but it's strong. You know, it's strong. Not for everyone. It's alright. With the car, it has been a challenge, but everything is alright. It's beautiful. We have a nice group of students from different South American countries. This was one of the reasons we needed a school for South America. We have a school in Brazil because the language, it's not the best option for Spanish-speaking people. There's some struggle with the language, especially if they have to participate. You can understand quite something if you speak Spanish, but you don't speak Portuguese. But then when it comes to participate, to interact, to read, and it gets difficult. Anyway, so just to announce this little good news that we have here. Just recently started the school, and the Lord's help, we also found teachers on time, and someone who's covering our time of absence. So it's a pleasure to be here. Second time for us in Canada. Second time in this area. That's we are happy. Last time was a little bit colder though. It's getting nicer. So in dialogue with Brother Tabo, what we'll be covering, depending on the circumstances, on not only our personal lives and schedules, but also the movements, advancement and circumstances. It wasn't that easy as in former years, where you say you do the 25-20, I do the charts or something like that. It's not. We are not in such a situation any longer in this movement. It doesn't seem to be that straightforward or that easy, at least. And talking today about what at the end we think to discuss, it seems that we had some very similar ideas. All right. So we won't be covering the same topics, but there will be overlappings. And what I've been seeing in my years in this movement is this happens all the time. So what I mean by that is the speakers not necessarily know what they will have to present until they come to a couple of days before, or 2 days of the camp meeting or the school. And when they are there together, they realize they present topics in harmony. There was no discussion before, but when they start to present, everybody contributes something to the very same issue or question, which always made us understand that the Lord is guiding. It is the Lord who impresses the teachers and the movement where he wants them to direct. So I think for all of us, what we are believing now as a movement, what we are teaching now, how we are organized, how everything works, who's doing what, etc. These are important questions. And out of the conversation I had with a brother from Mexico, raised this topic here for myself. What are the things that we have to unlearn in this movement? So what are the, if you want to put it like a little bit more negative or strongly, you could say, what are the errors of this movement? What are the things that we teach differently now? What are the things that we have not fully understood or where we did not really address the topic in its completeness as we should have, and what we've learned now, how we correct the course, how we correct our understanding. So I just found a couple of topics or issues that are being addressed right now in this movement, things that we have to unlearn. Yeah. You've been speaking about methodology. Methodology is not erasable out of this discussion. It's basic to it. You need to understand if you have the correct methodology. So at the end of the day, many of these issues depend on a wrong or correct methodology. Okay, and I'm with you. I guess on kind of in the same learning curve, in the same situation. And I need to relearn many things and unlearn many things. Was it Parminder thing he said in Brazil that those with the biggest advantage in this movement at the moment are those that come in new, that just freshly join this movement because they don't have certain preconceived ideas and they come in and they can just take up what's the latest and the best, the most advanced information, and they start freshly with it. While those that are long in the movement, even if they're not so long in the movement, they struggle with sets of thinking, with logic that they have taken, they have understood, they have taught, and they have to unlearn it. So it's a common thing that in the classes, for example, now in Bolivia or wherever, when you ask questions, there are some students they know the answer immediately, but then in class we have to understand that the answer is the old answer, the answer that we have learned, something the logic that we have learned in the past, and it's not valid any longer. Okay. So, and my personal course in this message has seen a couple of situations where I had to really struggle to get on board in this message. There was not a lack of will, but there was a lack of understanding. Brother Tabo recalled our crisis in this movement in 2012, this time period. And I remember that I was scheduled to speak in Wales and in Paris, like in the middle of the crisis, in the middle of the understanding that developed, understanding of new things. And I remember that I found myself in such a trouble that I almost quit. I almost said, I cannot present. I did a presentation. During the presentation, I realized I don't get it. I don't get how we see the lines. It was about the lines, the line of our line, how we see our line in comparison to the Millet line. Now, when Ezra 7:9 came in, and where are the waymarks located, etc. It was difficult for me because I had learned the old logic, 1840, 1840, the second angel's message, right? The angel coming down. This is an old logic that we had on the chart that we had some time ago, and then now it was different. I was not comfortable in the new things. I didn't understand them really, So when we were at Wales, and I had this situation, I remember well that I was scheduled. I had to present at some point in the evening, and it was like I had like 2 days or so. And I asked Brother Jeff, to go to run through the lines with me again because it didn't click for me yet. And we took advantage of a trip that he had to make to London to get his son, I think. And during the trip, he would explain me everything, and I recorded everything. And then we returned. I wanted to study it out again by myself, and then I realized I didn't record it properly, so I didn't have it. So I asked him again, please sit down with me, and I'm so sorry, but I really don't get it yet. And he sat down with me again, and went through the lines again. It was kind of dramatic for myself. I mean, if you have to present, and if you're in such a situation, and you master the logic of what we teach, well, you've been teaching it for a while, and then everything is different now, and then you say you don't get it, and you are like everyone else, or even worse, you don't understand it. You should understand it, and you have to teach it, and you cannot teach it. Anyway, so teaching becomes at the same time, then it helps you because you have to teach, and then you have to learn it in a dramatic circumstance, and then you learn it and you get it. And while you teach it, you get it. So this was a story I remember, and I didn't think it would repeat itself. But now we are here in this movement at a point where I realized, wow, same thing. Just recently in Brazil at the camp meeting, I realized there are many things I need to unlearn, and it's not that easy. It's not that easy at all, and you cannot, like how a pastor works today. He has his sermons, and the sermons are written. He wrote his sermons decades ago, and it's just an easy job because it takes one sermon and just he knows it by memory, And it's not like that. It's a challenge, and it's to unlearn. It's difficult because there's a logic that we are so familiar with. Our thinking builds around it. So for this reason, I found it important to address the issues, the topics, the things that we need to unlearn in this movement to have some more specific clarity on what is it. And it may not be for all of you an important thing. I don't know where you stand in this message. Perhaps, especially if you are newer in this movement, then some older things are not even an issue for you because you don't know them, or you have not been teaching them, etc. Anyways, so I have a little list here, and maybe you can add to this list some things that you have observed and have seen. There are some topics that I would like to study with you. And these are, I just put them here, like a little list. The issue of a logic that we have been using for a long time. That after the midnight cry, what comes after the midnight cry? Now after midnight, what comes after midnight? The midnight cry. And what comes after the midnight cry? There we go, the Sunday law. All right. So this logic, midnight cry, Sunday law, is something that we need to look into it. It's a very familiar logic of events that happen. I don't want to start with this today, but during the week I would like to address this line here. Is this line valid as we have it learned, if we have it used? If we have this line of events towards the end of a reform line, can we find this line in the line of the priest or the Levites or the Nethinims or 144,000? Where do we find this line? Yeah, and it has big implications because we use it all the time. This is one thing. I think this will be an interesting study because things are not as they used to be. All right. The second thing is a topic that Brother Jeff has introduced just recently at the Arkansas camp meeting, which he called half wrong or half right. And half right. The question of a development in the movement of something being, or a message being half right and half wrong. It's very interesting. You see it in the military history, you see it in our history, and then you also can have a look on the counterfeit history, on the history of Fatima, on history of Pope John Paul II, Pope Francis. So there's lots of material to this question. But connected to the question of being something half right and being something half wrong at the same time has to do with methodology. It is, you can find this development, you find this in history, you can find it in the theology, you can find it in our movement, but to make applications, it's a different thing, and then you need to go to methodology, you need to know how you can apply history. So this is just an example where we can learn something about how we address, how we use methodology in our time in order to come to correct conclusions. I think we'll start with this today. Another error that we committed in the past was that we rejected time. I do not intend to go through the whole logic of why we accept time or time setting now in our movement. It would be a longer, I think, it would require quite some presentation, and I also think there has been done quite some presentation on this issue. I just put it in the list of things. Maybe we address it, maybe not. The rejection of time as an error that we committed and why we introduce time in our movement is another thing that we are observing. Then there's a topic of, and this again is an issue of methodology. It's the issue of the time prophecy of the 2520. Maybe Brother Tabo will speak about it. I'll speak about it. Maybe I'll skip it. It depends a little bit on the conclusion we come to. But 2520 is a time prophecy. One of those dead understanding that to us are kind of easy to grasp, easy to teach, understandable, impressive. Many people are convicted by the time prophecy of 2520. Something that this is for me like something like a sermon that we have prepared 10 years ago, and we always can take it and present it. It's ready, it's logic, there's so many texts, and it makes so much sense, right? But not so long ago, Brother Parminder started to have a closer look on that, and we realized, oh, all right, there's something that we have not been saying correctly. Yeah, and the way that we've been teaching is bears some greater issues, some greater errors. So this is something that we need to reconsider. Not everything is the same, has the same problem. Some things that I would say it was totally wrong and we teach it totally different now. Something like this it doesn't mean that 2520 is a time prophecy is wrong, but maybe we need to teach it differently today. So there are different levels of something being wrong or different today. There's another issue, and this is not maybe this is not a teaching, but I just write it here: the rejection of Hillary Clinton. We have been teaching that Hillary Clinton is correct, or is the next president, something like that. It's not about that, but there's a mindset, or there's an understanding, or there's a theory behind accepting her and her policies and her plans or accepting Trump's, and to understand and to speak about their role in prophecy. So we just discovered that our attitude towards Hillary Clinton shows lots of misconceptions or issues that we in this movement have that exist. It's not something that it's not on the teaching, on the doctrine level, but there are issues that we have, that we carried into our movement from our past, all right? This includes conspiracy theories. So this is something we, I think, would be interesting to have a look at, because it's something that is part of the Midnight Cry, something that the Midnight Cry is dealing with. It's something that we need to be aware of. A little bit problematic here is that many things are addressed to the United States. I live in Bolivia. We don't have same constellation, we don't have the same newspapers, we don't have the same news channels. So you live in Canada, many of you have different circumstances, but there's a lesson to learn for all of us, I think, from that. Also may include the issue of the teaching of the year 2021. Something I had to deal with just recently, since I planned to speak about it in Brazil, and then I realized I needed to change my plans. And have you been studying this? Has any one of you been studying 2021? Anyone? Yeah. So maybe there maybe there are issues that are not an issue. That's why I said at the beginning, this is something we may speak about or not. It depends where you stand, if we need to go there. But the underlying issue of all of these questions here, the problems or areas, is: do we understand how to correctly proceed in reading and interpreting the Bible? Okay, it's methodology. And these are just, at the end, they're just examples. There are case studies on we got to a wrong conclusion about it, to this or that, because we had a wrong methodology, and it just became evident through different teachings. All right. Another issue is the 10 tribes. The 10 tribes has been a study that has been around very long in our movement. For many, many years, we always take it and use it at certain points. It's something that, one of these studies that, it's a smaller study, but we have been dealing with it and we use it all the time. We need it here, we need it there to explain things. We just realized that maybe there are some bigger issues on how we understand the 10 tribes. What do I mean by the 10 tribes? You have an idea what I mean when I say the study of the 10 tribes? What is it connected with, or which Bible passage is it connected with? Anyone an idea?
The 10 tribes. The 10 tribes of Israel, they're divided into 10 tribes and 2 tribes.
Yes, exactly. Now we have 2 tribes and we have 10 tribes. And there's a famous Bible passage that we are using if we are dealing with this issue. It's not so much about the 10 tribes in itself, There's a prophetic application that we make with the 10 tribes. One idea, suggestion? You remember Ezekiel 37? The valley of the dead dry bones? Right, and what happens after that? Just after the vision of the valley is finished. There are 2 sticks. So you also can call this the study of the 2 sticks, the joining of the 2 sticks. Remember that there are 2 sticks, the tribe of Judah and the stick of Israel. They are joined. One is the 10 tribes, one is the 2 tribes. So this is an important study for us. It's, as I said, a smaller study, but we've been using it. Once again, there are some things that we need to think over. Do you have any more issues that you have been seeing or understanding? Yes.
One thing that we hear about, and depending on who you're speaking with, their ideas, is what certain events look like for a long time, especially when Rafi and Paniam first came out. There was lots of talk and conjecture on what people believed it would look like, and now we're learning that it's going to look completely different from that.
You're going to talk about it?
You can speak over, but just letting you know that it was going to become.
Yes, I didn't plan to talk about it, so Brother Tabo is going to speak about it. It's good. I don't see it in the same category because this is something in development. You know, it's while we are studying events, we develop certain ideas on how they look like. Yes, we come to certain conclusions, and I remember well that when we first spoke about Raffia, then there was the discussion about the type of war, hot war, cold war. This is something that we developed, and maybe I think you could include it here. But in case of these things, it's what I see here. These are cherished truths. These are teachings that are said and used and repeated for a long time, and many of us have been teaching them and using them. And if you continue to teach it like we used to teach, then there is a problem, because there's the Midnight Cry. And the Midnight Cry basically points these issues out. Does it make sense to you, more or less, what I'm trying to explain or say? All right. It may not sound like, but I'm not English speaker, and I may speak English, but to feel comfortable in the language and express yourself is something different. Mm-hmm. So I've been in Spanish mode for quite a while now, and so bear with me when I need a little bit of time to get into the language. All right, half wrong and half right. I would like to start with that. To erase, you use the tip? Yes. All right. Okay, I would like to draw two lines. These lines are a revision and then an application of Millerite history. I don't know if we'll touch the second line today, maybe later. But this line should be familiar to you, at least to some degree. The first line is the true line. The second line is the counterfeit line. The true line is Millerite Adventist in our movement's history. But I would like to resume this history to certain points. Well, we don't need a second at the moment. Certain waymarks. This being the time of the end, 1798. And then we have another way that becomes important in this logic, which is the increase of knowledge. Where would you put it? Where would you locate the increase of knowledge in this line? 1790? Development? 1840? Why you say 1840?
Because that's when the angel revelation then came down and the argument, like this message revelation.
The increase of knowledge, you say 1840? All right, right. This is where we located a little bit early in 18. Did you say 1798? So it's a development. This is what one thing about it. It starts here. First angel message starts. Then it reaches a point. And this point we call the increase of knowledge. I put it a little bit more forward here. Yes. Okay, we located 1816 to 18. No.
18.
All right, yeah, perhaps that's a good idea. Thank you. Where Brother Miller, understood what he would be preaching during the rest of his life. Right, this is the increase of knowledge as a waymark, as a point. We also can have it as a period which reaches beyond that. Okay. This here I would, this is 1844. When this true movement, or this first phase of this movement comes to an end, we have an alpha and then we see an omega here. I'm looking at it from the perspective of half wrong and half right. This is the idea behind this. The message that has been developed here and it reaches its culmination in 1844. What was the message? What has been preached since the beginning of the movement? What was it, if you want to put it in a couple of words or sentences? Just to boil it down, a simple message. Sister? Daniel 8:14, and if what is Daniel 8:14? Just in your words. I know what it is, they know what it is, but someone might not know what it's Daniel 8:14. Just in your words, just make it simple.
Until, because of the beginning of days, until the sanctuary becomes.
Okay, the cleansing of the sanctuary. This may be abstract for someone else who's not so acquainted with Adventist history. It's correct. How would you put it in other words? The cleansing of the sanctuary. If you have to explain it to a friend of you who's not Adventist, or who's Adventist. If you explain it to another Adventist, what is Daniel 8:14? What does it mean? What happened here? What were they preaching? Yes, Christ is coming, right? Okay, he would cleanse the sanctuary. It's framed in these words. He comes to cleanse the sanctuary. He has a work to do. But the sanctuary is the earth, right? This was the teaching. The sanctuary is the earth. So Christ is coming. It's a second coming. No, it's encapsulated in these words, in this chapter, in these verses, but it's a message about Christ coming. So then the question is, and here is the simple logic of the study. Was this correct? Did Christ come? Did Christ come? Uh-huh. Did he come here? He did not come, as they taught. He did not come it was not his second coming, he didn't come to the earth. So therefore, the message was wrong. Well, was it completely wrong? Why was it not completely wrong? Because he did come? Yes, brother?
because he did not come to the earth. So cleanse the sanctuary means he would move from one place to the other, whether it was from here, from heaven to earth, or from heaven to somewhere else on the earth, or from heaven to somewhere else in heaven. So but he did need to do something on that day, and he did do something. He displaced himself. So, and that is the part that was right. Now, the part that was incorrect is where he moved to. He did not move to the earth. He moved into the morsel.
Okay, yeah, I agree. But where was this part correct? Where was it correct? I mean, you say it was correct. Was it correct in the words of the Millerites, or was it correct in the Bible?
I would say it was correct in the Bible.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But what did they teach?
That he was gonna come.
So what they taught was correct, or was it wrong?
He was half right and half wrong.
Amen. When they teach about second coming, they did not teach that Christ comes to the sanctuary. And the sanctuary is in heaven. This was not what they were teaching, right? So this was wrong. The truth was in their words, it was within what they were saying, but like the bare words, it was not correct. Yes?
Time was right.
The time was right. Yeah, so the part of the message that was right was the 10th day of the 7th month, right? 22nd of October, the time was right. So the time, right. I just put here right and wrong. Okay, so you can.
But why do you say that the time was right?
Say it again.
Why do you say that the time was right? Because it's not time.
What is no time?
Sorry?
Say it again. I don't
You
know.
say that
The time was
the
right.
time was right,
Yes.
but the time was right to just come in on the 1844.
Yeah.
But the time wasn't right
Why was the time not right?
because it's not coming.
Okay. Yes. The time was not right for the wrong event, but the time was right in itself for the correct event. Because on that very same day, Christ did do something specifically. The time in itself was right. It was just disconnected to the right event. I don't know if you agree with that. So here you have a half right and you have a half wrong at this point in time. The message connected to time was correct. The interpretation of the event was wrong. Okay? Good. Where do we locate the end of the development of this history? 1863. What happens 1863 to end similar history? I think this is a fair date. Yes, we could put that. I was thinking of another date, perhaps, in terms of finishing the work, finishing this 1850. Because what happens 1850, or why would we put this here as the finishing of this development? The second chart was published. What else do we say happens here? Or what is ready here at this point?
Evangelism with a better understanding of the truths that they're teaching.
Okay. From that point on what? To the word? The Sabbath, you know, there was the marriage, the message was developed, right? What marks the first chart? What do the charts stand for? What are the symbols of? Habakkuk's tables, all right. Why did they need to have this chart in this movement? You remember the parallel to the charts. The charts are a parallel to what in the Old Testament? The Ten Commandments. What were the Ten Commandments for? What do they seal or what do they mean? Covenant, correctly. So they are the platform on which the covenant is signed, both sides. So you understand that the charts do the same thing? Yeah, they're a symbol of the covenant. You need to know what you agree on. You need to know what you believe in order to say, okay, I agree with this movement. I'm in this movement, and this is what the charts deliver. Yeah, they say this is the paper, this is the covenant, this is the movement. This is what we believe. I agree. I'm with the chart, and therefore the second chart. All right. So the charts, they mark the covenant. They mark that here this movement is finished in terms of it's ready. It has everything it needs to know to seal this movement. So this is why I put this here as a midpoint to the first history, and then we come to our second history. What I'm just doing now is I'm just trying to repeat or resume this logic of what has been taught, what we have been teaching, half right and half wrong. I'm just make the revision, the repetition of this teaching, and then later on we come and we'll see what problems there are. This is not wrong. This is all correct. Yeah, it's just all right. Then. And I would place 1863, as already mentioned here, as it's actually, as you said, brother. It depends on how you look at it. It can be the end or it can be the beginning. It's a turning point. What does 1863 mean? Why does it become a waymark? A rejection of what? Something is rejected, that's correct. You remember, sister?
Church organization.
Organization is an important point here. The church organizes itself, or the movement organizes itself into a church.
They reject Ellen White.
They reject Ellen White.
I don't know.
Someone help? They reject a prophecy. Yes, they reject this time prophecy. And they make a new chart, 1863, that doesn't have time prophecies on there. And if they reject the time prophecy, if they reject one time prophecy, what do they do? Actually, they reject everything. They reject the covenant. So, rejection of prophecy. These two developments, they make this a waymark. Yeah, the church organizes itself, and they take a decision. When they take the decision to organize itself, it's not disconnected. We once realized that the events are connected to, there's an external visible development like the organization, but there's also internally something going on. What they believe, what they teach. Theology, the interpretation, this goes parallel. You cannot disconnect. So the rejection of prophecy is connected to the organization. These two things happen here, and they start a phase of the church. All right. Sorry. And then now, so if this is 1989 here, in this history, there's a specific development that we understand can be explained as a repetition of what's going on here. There's an increase of knowledge. And any suggestion what this could be here? What waymark we could locate here? This is a long history, and perhaps it's a little bit difficult to guess on your side which date I mean, but maybe you have any suggestion. 1888, yes, 1888. 1888 is a increase of knowledge. So there's now some interesting history connected to this in terms of half right and half wrong. Okay, because this is what we are trying to look at. Here in 1888, we have two parties. We have two groups in our church. Which are these two groups that are contending, that have different positions?
Those who believe on righteousness by faith and others who believe on righteousness by works.
Okay, perhaps not going into the theology, what they exactly mean, because I think it's quite a big topic, but yes. And who stands for the one side? You give me a name. Ellen White. Yeah, and I would like to put here Wagner. If he's the one who stands for righteousness by faith, who's the other one, the contender here, or he's the opposite? Who represents the other side? General Conference, and General Conference was led by whom? Anyone? Butler. Okay, so we have these two. And both were actually engaged in a struggle. Yeah, they both, as persons, they wrote things to respond what the other is teaching. Right, so we have these two persons, and they appear here at this point in time. And what Jeff has been pointed out, that this is a history that starts 2 years before 86, prominently. Why does it start there? What happens in 1886? Someone remembers? This is right now, maybe, but in terms of this struggle, there was a book written. Huh? Galatians. It is called The Law in the Book of Galatians. Yes? Who writes this book? Butler. Put it here. The Law in the Book of Galatians. Yes.
Sorry, just a clarification. 1863, if you put increase in knowledge there, does it make it a time of the end? Or if the increase of knowledge can happen at any time?
It depends on, yeah, I understand what you mean. Yeah. I don't think that we've been calling this time of the end. Nevertheless, and this is not a reform line, and for this reason I think we don't do it. So this is a reform line, but I'm not studying this line as a reform line. I'm studying this line as in the light of half right, half wrong. So this overlaps with other. This is time of the end, and therefore this would be time of the end, but this is not what we are studying in this line. No, we are studying a development of something that is half wrong and half right. Nevertheless, there's an increase of knowledge here, right, on this issue of righteousness by faith. And in this history, you have here this book written, and in 88 you have the famous conference. Okay, where these two positions on the book of Galatians become evident. what Butler is writing, you say he represents the church. So what he's writing, was it something new? Was it something special? Or was this here the new and the special thing? The new light. What was the new thing? What was the new light? I think perhaps too easy a question. I think you know about it, but who's the newcomer in this history? Wagner. Yeah, this is the new light. This is the new approach. And Butler's approach, what approach was Butler's approach? What was he defending? Well, was it just his opinion on that, his take on the Galatians, or what was it what he was defending? He was the traditional view. So what he's standing for is not that he has another idea on it. He's defending what the church is teaching, what the movement has been teaching. So he's the defense of the tradition, the defense of the old view, if you would like to say that. But it's not something that he is not coming up with something on his own. You know, he stands for the old views, values, and it's perhaps you could say on the pioneers. You know. So this is a fight. It's interesting, but it's a fight between a traditional view that has been acknowledged, it has been defended, and then there's this new light, this new opinion on it, and these clash together. So who was right? Wagner? Why was he half wrong and half right?
I think because it looks to me like they were both promoting their own side and not seeing the other person's side as being part. It's like saying, Butler was saying, my side is the side of the coin that you can see, so that's all there is to it, and there's nothing on the other side, or there's nothing else to consider. And Wagner seems to me like he was saying the same thing, but maybe they failed to recognize that both sides of the coin actually makes the coin, not just the one side, but kind of like one side of the coin.
Yeah.
You need two sides to make the coin, and it looks like they were not saying that, or
I agree with you.
Maybe I think they felt that their side was more important.
I agree with you. There's more to the truth than just a new aspect that I discover. You know, and it's certainly a deep and big study. You know, what have they been teaching? And I'm not an expert on that issue and that question. But we have a statement from Ellen White, which resumes actually what you've been saying. You find it in volume 9, Manuscript Releases, on page 218, first paragraph. And without understanding the whole story and the argument that has been going on, this helps us to come to a conclusion about who was right, who was wrong. And she says, he, and she's referring to the angel, to her angel, accompanying angel. He stretched out his arms toward Wagner, Dr. Wagner, and to you, Elder Butler, she writes. Now this angel stretched out his hands, his arms, and said in substance as follows: neither have all the light upon the law. Neither position is perfect. So neither the position of Wagner in this issue was perfect, was complete, neither the light that the other had was complete or perfect. Light is sown for the righteous and gladness for the upright in heart. There are hundreds that know not why they believe the doctrine they do. So this statement, actually an angel intervened and explained to Ellen White that neither of them is totally correct on that issue. So what makes it? What makes this the message of Butler in this logic here? Half right and half wrong. Okay, we are not trying to say 60% right, 40% wrong. This not, but we are just playing with this concept. This was not totally right. It's not totally wrong, neither. All right. So we have here, and the same for Wagner. Half right, half wrong. What we see here, and this is why we put this here, that you have this book. This book to formalize what is being taught, what is being said. This is an important waymark in this logic. It's written down. Maybe we can find this here also, but it's a little bit different. Okay. I'm used to 1 hour formats, but we're 1.5 hours, so we have a little bit more time, and so we can start the counterfeit line. The counterfeit line is not so familiar to us. We have been seeing this history since Sister Tess has been teaching about Fatima, the role of the papacy, in a little bit different way that we've been understanding it. And nevertheless, it's a very interesting study. So here I would like to start the line in 1899. Someone an idea how we come to this date? Well, you're really not required to understand why 1899, but it has to do with the Pope of this time. The Pope that is a counterfeit to Miller. All right. Here you have Miller and you have Snow. And this is what I forgot to say. You have 2 names here. You have Wagner and you have Butler. Neither of them was fully right. Neither of them was fully wrong. Here you also have 2 names. And these were Miller and who else? Snow. No, because in regards to this question here, 1844, you have Miller who said this will happen. And then you have Snow who put a date, a correct date on it, right? His date was right. But he was not fully right because the event was wrong. So you have the 2 names, you have the 2 names here. And here you have another person in this history that is a count of history, and this is a man called Pacelli. Pacelli's complete name, Eugenio Maria Giuseppe Giovanni Pacelli. Okay? We just call him Pacelli. And then later on we call him differently because who is he later? He's an important pope. Pope Pius, how you say, Pius or Pius? Pius the 12th. Pius, Spanish, yeah. Now this is the Pope. This is the Pope of the Second World War. It's not the Pope only of the Second World War, but this is the one important Pope dominated this time period. A long time afterwards, he would continue, but he also plays a role already in this from the early stages on. In 1899, he became priest. He was ordained priest. This is why we start with this date. He became Pope when the Second World War started in 1939. But 1899 he was ordained. I hope I'll be able to explain a little bit more about this man. But for now, in the logic of a development here of half right and half wrong, I will mark 1917 what happened in 1917 in the history of the counterfeit. Important date to this history here. Catholic history. Fatima, right? The appearance of Fatima, the appearance of Maria in Fatima in 1917. Any date? This date it's important to us, and it's important to the Catholics as well, because they realize that the dates repeat and events repeat on dates. So this makes this line even more interesting to us, because we see that they have a certain grasp of the importance of dates, as we have as well. But they just see dates repeating and say, okay, this is not an accident. Well, so we have here this development. In 1917, you know the history a little bit of Fatima, right? When this happened in Portugal, what was the reaction of the church? They rejected it. Yeah. What is the message of Fatima to the church in parallel to what is this message to our movement?
It's the fourth three angels message.
Aha, it's a message, yeah?
Counterfeit to the three angels message.
Okay. But if you want to counterfeit to the three angels message, but if you're a Catholic and you want to do the right thing, what do you have to do with this message? You have to accept it. Yeah, you need to stand in favor of the Fatima message in order to be in harmony with the correct development of the church. Yeah. All right. So this message becomes important. And any of you have an idea what Pacelli's position was to the Fatima message? Did he reject it? Why would you say he rejected it?
But I think a number of the folks were not agreeing to consecrate Russia to Mary.
Exactly. Yeah, so he did not proceed with the instructions. He didn't proceed. Who proceeded with the instructions given by Mary? Which pope was it that did what he was supposed to do? Pope Pius?
More recently?
I mean, in the line of popes that are confronted with the message, who was it that fulfilled what John Paul II? Yeah, so it took 80 years, more or less, into the future that the church would accept the message. If you would say it, the three angels message, the counterfeit three angels message, they would accept. For a long time they would not, they would reject it. Right, so, but nevertheless, I just read you a little statement, and it is written by, I couldn't find who she is, Emilia Paola Pacelli. So I don't know, seems to me like family, yeah? Family, I don't know if it's how related to him, but she writes, and this appeared in the, it's kind of important because it appeared in the Vatican newspaper, Osservatore Romano. So it has some level of importance. In 1998, she wrote in regard to Pacelli, in the perspective of faith, as we know, nothing happens by chance. Now, this I think I find interesting. Now, they understand, they think the Lord, God is guiding them. You know, nothing happens by chance. And some apparently chance occurrences are indicative or indicative signs of a providential course of events. In my words, the Lord is leading history. It is not an accident that certain things happen at certain points in time. Not, we believe, was it a chance occurrence, an accident, that the burial of Eugene Pacelli took place on 13th of October 1958. This is when he was buried. the anniversary of the last apparition of Fatima. So in the apparitions of Fatima that occur here, the last one was October 30, what did you say, 31? No, October 13. Yes, of course, it was always 13th. This was the last apparition, and on the very same date, 40 years later, this Pope died. All right, and she says this is providential, this is not an accident. Same day. A further clear confirmation of Mary's desire to accompany that faithful son of hers to the threshold of eternity. So from Catholic perspective, that this Pope died on this important waymark date, October 13, 40 years later, is a sign that Mary acknowledged his service. You understand what I'm saying?
No, say that again.
Okay. It's nothing complicated, just try to, nothing very significant either. It's just trying to understand what she's saying. So this Pope here, Pacelli, Pius XII, my question was, did he agree with the Fatima message or not? And then we remembered he did not fulfill it. He did not proceed the way he was supposed to. But this Catholic writer says, Mary actually acknowledged him. Because why? Because she let him die October 13, 1900, and what would it be, 58. Okay? This is 40 years after this event here. All right? And she says, a further clear confirmation of Mary's desire to accompany that faithful son of hers. So that he died here, for Catholics, is a very good sign, a clear sign that Mary, thumbs up for this man. You know, he's positive. All right? It's nothing that I want to see here in this line of right or wrong. I'm just putting it there to yeah? Clearer now? Okay. Indeed, the Blessed Virgin had taken that son by the hand when he was still very young, a child predestinated by God to guide the Church in the most tragic period of history. She had accompanied him step by step from the fervent Marian devotion of his infancy to his first Mass celebrated in St. Mary's Majors in the Saulus Populi Romani Chapel, from his episcopal consecration on the same day that Mary appeared in Fatima, from his episcopal consecration on the same day that Mary appeared in Fatima. So there's more to this history. I don't know about these details, but there was this event also. At the same time that Mary appeared, he had his first episcopal consecration to the throne of Peter. Preparation, in a certain sense, for the role that the future Pius XII was destined to play in the glorification of the Mother of God, especially in relation to the events of Cova d'Iria. Okay, what happened at Cova d'Iria? Now this is in this history here. We have this event. Cova d'Iria is a place in Portugal. Yeah, it's very close to Fatima. And in Cova d'Iria something happened where Mary confirmed that she was the one who was guiding this. What happened there? Huh? This was just before that. At this place there was the apparition. There was the miracle, right? When the girl said, "Well, Mary will confirm that she is really the one. That we are not inventing. That she is guiding this." And at this place, which means Cova means a cave, exactly, cave. You know, at this cave, this is where the people gather. This is where the photographs, the journalists came to see, and then you have this movement of the sun. Yeah. Right? This is this place. So, what was his play? What was his reaction to this here? This is what she's trying to say. He accepted Yeah, he accepted. Initially, the Catholic Church was very skeptical, did not accept. Some did, majority didn't, the leaders didn't accept the event. But he then accepted this event. So he says, yes, it was a miracle. This happened, he was still young, he would be Pope many years later, but okay. So what I'm saying is this Pope, to a certain degree, he accepted this message. Yeah, he was right. In terms of the message that the church needed to preach in this time period, he was right. So this gives him a half right. That he did not fulfill what Mary asked to consecrate Russia does not necessarily mean he was wrong. Okay? I don't understand all the implications of this history, but maybe it was just not the time. He was not supposed to do it. And just continue to read the last part here. From that 13th of May 1917, in which Eugene Pacelli received episcopal consecration, to the dramatic 13th of May 1981, on which the blood of the Vicar of Christ was spilled on the ground in Rome. So this is another 13th of May that she puts here in this history. And this has nothing to do with our study, it's just, as she mentions this here in this article, I just want to put it here on the board because it's interesting as well. This was when they tried to kill John Paul II, right? It was the very same day, 13th of May. 13th of May. So for them, in their prophetic understanding, this is what she's been trying to say since the beginning, it's not an accident. This history is guided by the Lord. You know, it's, you can clearly see for them the hand of the Lord intervening, not an accident. It's providence, as she said. All right? So this makes it even more, for our understanding, our comprehension, a counterfeit history. It's a counterfeit history. Because from their perspective, it looks all good. Yeah, it looks directed, not an accident. There are too many, would be too many accidents. This is what happens on this important date. And once again, here on that day, what she said, this Pope, Pacelli, he has his first episcopal consecration. Was not Pope yet, but he was a priest, I think, already. And he's his first consecration, episcopal consecration. All right, so far to this man, just a little introduction to this man. I would like to end this line, and this, as you see this, it comes close in harmony to our line. What was 1945. What happened 1945? Huh? I didn't understand. Someone said something?
End of one of the wars.
The end of the World War? Yeah? This is the end of the Second World War. And what does this have to do with the Catholic Church? What does this have to do with Pacelli, or Pius XII by now? He's Pope since 39, I'm sorry.
All the world in general is looking to him for guidance, or at least the nations, maybe not so much the church.
Yes, the church as well.
Looking to him
Yes.
for guidance.
The world, as you say, I think this is correct. The world looks for guidance. Because you have this rising power in Germany. You have Adolf Hitler, and he's doing these atrocities, and nobody intervenes. Yeah. Nobody intervenes because of what he does to the Jews. They don't intervene because of this. They intervene because of territorial issues. You know, this is why they intervene. They start the Second World War. But nobody intervenes, and you have lots of Catholics in Germany too. So they need direction. Can they participate in new things? Is this correct? Doesn't seem to be correct. It seems to be so wrong. What is the church doing? What is the church saying? Because specifically, you had another pope. I forgot. Any one of you remember what was the pope before Pius XII? I don't know. So if you know, just put it there. Anyways, the pope before him, he had a different attitude towards Hitler. He was pretty much in opposition, quite open opposition to this government. But this one was not in such an obvious opposition, not at all. Some argue that he helped some Jews to flee, but you can show he helped 1,000 Jews to flee at the end, and it was a little bit complicated. He doesn't seem to be very, very clear in opposition. He seemed to be more silent on everything. So this is an issue with him. But in terms of our study of the prophetic role, you have here a reform line. Yeah? You have three angels' messages, counterfeit three angels' messages for the Catholic Church. Church was intended to become what here in 1945, at the end of this history? If you see it in parallel to this, what should have happened here with the church?
They should have, that message or that belief should have been given to the whole world in the same way in 1844 the Lord Cry was supposed to be given by the Romanian Millwrights to the rest.
Yes, okay, this is one side of their job to the others, outside of the world, but within the church, what should have happened?
Strengthen some.
Strong? Yeah. They should have stood strong. And how would this be visualized? How would the church be strong? What must happen that the church is a strong church? What was the aim at the end?
Consecration.
Consecration? More than that. You need to see something.
There must be in harmony with the belief system.
Say it again?
No, they had to be in harmony. They had to accept the doctrine so that they would be in harmony with
Yes.
the Catholic Church.
But if you think about politics, if you think about what they do in the world, what church should have been, how should it look like at this point? What is the aim of the Catholic Church? Say it in other words. To rule the whole world. Just as easy as that. So, did they rule the whole world in 1945? No. Were they trying to rule the whole world? Were they trying to rule the whole world?
They were.
How were they trying to rule the whole world? What were the means to get there? Because Rome doesn't have an army. So what do they do always?
They take the armies of some
They
other country.
take the armies of some. What was their plan in this history?
They were living on Germany.
So they chose Germany, right?
Yes.
They chose Germany. And if you see history from that perspective, then you can understand the Pope. Then you can understand why he is not that clear and that open intervening. Because this was his ally. And Pacelli did also something else. He did in this time, and this is some important waymark, I would say, an important decision. Just let me find the date here. All right. This is from Wikipedia. It says, while the Vatican was officially neutral during World War II, Pius XII maintained links to the German resistance, etc. He was also a staunch opponent of communism and of the Italian Communist Party. During his papacy, the Church issued the decree against communism. declaring that Catholics who profess communist doctrine are to be excommunicated as apostates from the Christian faith. In turn, the Church experienced severe persecution and mass deportations of Catholic clergy in the Eastern Bloc. So in this logic that we are seeing here, this history, how we understand history, there was a war going on. The world doesn't understand this. There was World War II, there was Hitler, this crazy man, but there was actually another war going on. And this war was the war of the Catholic Church. She tried to take advantage of Adolf Hitler to dominate the world and to get the way she wanted. This is why they issued this decree, why they were fighting against communism. And communism understood, because they fought back. And they started to, as it says here, mass persecution of Catholics started. Because they started a war against them, so they fought back. You know, this is a war that has been going on, they understood it. So, now in terms of this history, you have a message, and the message is accepted. Yeah, he accepts the message, because he's fighting against communism. We can see it through this. He's actually trying to fulfill Mary's will. He takes the right stand on this. But in terms of choosing Hitler, was it successful or not? We know. He chose the wrong. He chose the wrong army. Yes? Or as we also would say, he chose the wrong beast. He sat on this beast. He thought this beast looked strong enough. The Germans, they look good enough to rule the world. He thought they would make it happen for them, and it was a wrong decision. So he was half right, and he was half wrong. We do not have, like in this history, two men here. Yeah, it's all the way it's the same man. But if you want, you can split this man in two parts. You have Pacelli, the man and the priest, and you have Pacelli, the Pope. It's Pacelli and it's Pius XII. It's the same. It's two different names. So it's not the very same thing, but it's something similar. All right? Good.
So you were saying that it's the same person that was involved in that time, like the Pope, that's who you're referring to? Pope
Yes.
Pius? Okay.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is this history here. This here is the history of Miller and Snow. This here is the history of Pacelli, of one man. But Pacelli in 1939 became Pope Pius. Yeah?
Yeah.
So if you want to, you can say it's the history of one man, but it's the history of two men, two names, but it's the same. Yeah, in that sense. Okay, I think to that point I think he will stop here. There's the counterfeit line that continues, but we can't say it in 5 minutes. So so far this study, you follow? Do I make myself clear? You have any questions to what we've been saying up to now?
What happened to the book, the law is the book of Galatians? We don't read it anymore, do we? We don't have a need.
I don't know what happened to that book. You know, the other book, or the Positions of Wagner, I think was not permitted in the church. It was not permitted to be printed or to be sold. I don't know what happened with that book. I'm sure you can find it out there. And this history it's just such a huge topic. I don't know very much about the history of 1888, about its important points and issues. Just have a superficial knowledge on that. Okay. Yes.
In 1981, lines up with
No. Please forget these dates here. I just put on it because it was in this article, but they don't have anything to do with these lines. Yeah, you can erase them and you can put them in. It was just to show that the Catholics have also a prophetic vision of dates, of events, and they understand it's not coincidence. Yeah, it's providence. Yes.
I just wanted to make an observation that the actual time frames, I know it, one line is true and one line is counterfeit, but if you calculate between 1816 and 1844, that's 28 years. And if you calculate, I think, between 1917 and 1945, that's also 28 years.
So say it again.
So between 1917
Yeah. And 1945?
and 1945 is 28 years.
And
Also between 1816 and 1844, it's 28 years.
starting from 6?
1816 to
Yes,
1844
yes.
is 28 years.
That's interesting. I haven't seen that. That would be another detail to see. We used to speaking about parallel histories. It's a little bit scary, because it hasn't been a way how we approach, and it's a wrong history, or it's a counterfeit history, but nevertheless it has its. If it's a counterfeit, then it needs to come close to the original, right? So, okay, since it has major implications, we have this look at this history because it's important to know. All right, let's close the prayer. Heavenly Father, we praise you. We thank you so much that you are so patient with us. You give us time, and then more time, and extra time, and you also granted us this possibility to get here together, to take some time off, to study, to dedicate 2 weeks to special investigation and studying together. We thank you. Guide us through these studies, that we may be blessed, that we may understand, that we may perfect our understanding and convictions, that we may overcome and things that we may have learned or understood wrongly, so that we may give the message a clarity and a pureness as never before. In Christ's name, amen.